personality creates your personal reality.
Authentic power is when your personality comes to serve the energy of your soul.
The truth is the body is one ecosystem. You can get to the root cause and everything goes away.
Thank you for tuning in to the Reconditioned podcast. I'm Vaknine. I'm a health writer and holistic wellness coach. And my own journey from disability to remission taught me that wellness through a mind-body approach can take time when we don't know where to begin. And that's why I created this podcast, to bring you the answers to all your well-being questions in the most accessible way possible. Whether you're suffering from chronic illness, raising children in a world of conflicting information, or you simply want to feel empowered and motivated to become the best version of yourself, join me along with expert guests as we uncover the most actionable ways to recondition ourselves back to wellness. This episode of Reconditioned is sponsored by Mega Home Water Distillers, the most reliable and efficient home drinking water distiller. Mega Home are kindly offering listeners of the Reconditioned podcast a 5% discount. Just use the code CONDITION5 at checkout. That's CONDITION 5. Thank you to Mega Home. Welcome back to Reconditioned, everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again. I've got a very special episode for you today with a very dear friend of mine, Aisha Carrington, who is truly a wonder, actually. She created a business called Get Lit, and she facilitates the Get Lit retreats, which I was fortunate enough to go on in Morocco last November. And it was honestly a transformative experience for me. I came away having discovered things about myself that I never knew. And it opened up a whole load of stuff. I mean, my ancestral healing journey started there. Definitely did so much inner child healing, mirror work, shadow work. I mean, it was really, really sensational. It was also quite poignant for me because I was in my ancestral land. My dad's family are from Morocco. My dad was born in Morocco, lived there till he was 20. And generations and generations before him, for as far back as we know, are from Morocco. So it was very special for me. And the interesting thing about it was that I didn't know my grandmother from that side very well. She lived in Israel. We saw her once a year and she died when I was 10, so I didn't get to know her that well. And I was very close to my maternal grandparents. So when I went to Morocco, although I felt like, I'm going back to my ancestral land, and I had been to Morocco before for family stuff, but I didn't feel the sense of connection. And then very kind of divinely timed, an aunt sent me a picture that she found of my grandmother with her mother and her sister and two of my grandmother's 8 children. She had 8 biological children, including my dad, and 2 stepchildren, sitting down outside the house. They had presumably stopped their chores for the day and they were sitting, and I could see everything I could see in this picture. It was talking to me so much. And they were sat there with an authentic Moroccan teapot and tray in front of them, like they'd stopped their chores for tea. She was pregnant again, my grandmother, with I think it was her 5th or 6th child in that picture. It was taken from the 1950s, and this picture got sent to me just before my trip to Morocco. And in this trip, Aisha organised for us to have a photo shoot, self-love photo shoot. This was a self-love retreat, so it really opens up a lot of stuff surrounding where you're lacking in self-love and where those blocks come from. And she organised a self-love photo shoot, and the photographer was this most amazing woman called Leonie, who I showed the picture to, and she said, wow, that's pretty amazing. We should recapture this image. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you're in Morocco now and you've just done all this like inner child work, and your grandmother probably never had these sorts of opportunities. We should recapture this. And so after the shoot was done, she went downstairs with me and we found a place to do the photo, and we recaptured this image. And the very next night we did an ancestral healing meditation with one of the other girls, Kelly Pretty, who, if you're not following her on Instagram, you should. She's brilliant as well. She facilitated this ancestral healing session, and it was like I was releasing these generations of repression and oppression in women, the women from my ancestral line, and knowing that all women of those times, like literally just before our generation, would have suffered so much in so many ways. You know, my grandmother got married to my grandfather when she was 18. He was twice her age. He was widowed. He already had 3 children. She raised 2 of them. One of them was the same age as her, so didn't live with them. She then bore 8 children of her own, and all she ever did was provide. You know, she was maternal and nurturing to her core on the outside, and there was so much love from her, but she had no connection to self and no way of releasing herself from that sort of oppression and the requirements on her. And in that ancestral healing meditation, it was like I released all of that for the generations before me. And the picture we took was the same image of me sitting on the floor with my legs out with a Moroccan teapot in front of me. And it was so poignant because it was like history had rewritten itself in a positive way. So the backstory of my grandmother in the picture was stopping in her chores that would never end. You know, that she would go up on the roof. This is the story my dad told me. Once the sun had gone down once a week, and that's where she would wash the sheets. So once all the kids were in bed, and you know, her chores were never ending. And then there's me in this picture with my head wrapped in a headscarf like in her picture, with a Moroccan teapot in front of me, sitting on the same Moroccan earth, but free from all that oppression and all those ties, and able to step into my own purpose and my power and my self-worth and make decisions and choices that were for me, not for everyone else. And it was so poignant and such a huge part of my inner child healing and my ancestral healing, which has had a huge impact on my general well-being. So I wanted to share that with you. And the episode with Aisha that you're about to hear, it was like a chat between friends that opens up so much amazing stuff that we both delved into. And like it was like a therapy session almost. And we were like, oh wow, yeah. It was just so beautiful. And we ended the recording and we were just sat there talking to each other on Zoom, both crying and really emotional about the things that had come up. So I'm really excited for you to hear it, and looking forward to you kind of immersing yourself in this as if you are perhaps there with us, or, you know, just imagine kind of you're in a room with 2 friends having this really deep spiritual chat that opens up so much space for healing, where we just kind of like hold space for each other, and so much opens up from there. So enjoy. Aisha is amazing. I know you're going to love it. Don't forget to get in touch and let me know your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram. And if you like this podcast or any of the episodes, it really helps other people to find it if you share the episode on social media, if you rate and review it on Apple. And I also just love to hear people's thoughts and if they're enjoying the show. So enjoy, and on with the show. Aisha Carrington is a prominent speaker and educator in spirituality, using meditation, sound, and angel guidance as mediums for her gifts, facilitating groups in London's leading wellness studios. She is founder of the hugely popular Get Lit Retreats, an urban retreat that uses laughter, dance, R&B, and soul, and so much more to help women release stress, recenter, and find a path back to self-love. Aisha's passions lie with bringing diversity and inclusivity into the wellness industry in a truly heart-centered way to make access to healing and wellness an open, safe space for people from all backgrounds. So I'm so excited to have you here. We've been talking about it for so long, and obviously now was the right time for us to share this.
So perfect timing.
Hi. The journey. Okay, I always begin with the journey. Your upbringing, cultural background, how you came to do what you're doing. That's really how I like to start.
Amazing. So, cultural background. So my parents are both born in England, but their parents are both from the Caribbean. So they're from St. Vincent and Barbados. So that's where my grandparents are from. That's where a lot of the heritage is from. So that is kind of like why I always wanted to mix it into what I do. And that only really came in like the last 5 years. So that's where I come from. I'm also from a background of being a personal stylist. So like fashion is my everything, and it always has been. So it's always been a bit about just working that into life. So I was styling for maybe 10 years before I got into the wellness industry. So that is where my heart and soul has always been, and it always is, even when I turn up to things. And especially when I got into wellness, it was always a bit like, well, I want to bring my culture into this, and I want to bring, a bit about style, because we've all known for so long wellness was all very seemed as hippie, and you had to be quite free, and the clothing you'd wear would either be yoga inspired or it'd be like big baggy colorful pants like you was at a festival. So when I moved into wellness, it was bringing that culture of myself and how I dress, whether it be like a Bob Marley t-shirt and it would be like Adidas pants or big hats, and just really bringing my fashionable flair into wellness. And I think there was a real cut-off point where it felt like if you were a certain type of person, whether it be due to race, culture, or just how you dress, then the minute you got into a wellness space, you had to try and conform. So it was really nice to try and bring all those elements together and just bring each flavor into it. So that's a bit about how I've mixed that into work, and just about bringing it into life in general and owning who you are. I think that was also a part of it.
I love that about the fashion, because I always felt like, because I love clothes as well, and I always have done. And again, being in wellness, I always thought that it was like I didn't fit into the kind of super fashionable, I don't know, that side of things. But then did I have to dress like, a 1980s hippie to be accepted in the wellness industry? And actually, the whole point of spirituality and wellness is delving into who you are and finding your authenticity. So I love that people like you are doing that, because I've definitely found that for me, bringing my own identity into what I do without having to feel like I have to conform to how I should look is so important. But also, it's just how you're talking about fashion. We can kind of see fashion as being, especially when you're in the wellness industry and in spirituality, you're kind of making it acceptable that fashion doesn't have to be the superficial thing. It's really, an identity thing. So I love that.
Yeah, I really think so. That's even why now, when it comes to like the retreats that are for longer retreats, the ones that are overnight, I think fashion is such an important thing, because you got to think we get up every single day, which is why I love styling so much. It was my first healing modality that I didn't even realize, because it's a body armor. You got to think when we get dressed, whether it's for school run, whether it's for going out at night, whether it's for every day, it's why we think when we go into an office we think suits, because it's a body armor. It's how we dress, it's how people perceive us, and it's also how we care for ourselves. Like just putting on nice underwear is self-care, because you think about yourself differently, you carry yourself differently. So especially when I was going through my real deep healing, I realized that I really, if I didn't rely on fashion, I couldn't protect myself in a sense, because it was a protection. It was a form of, you're going to see my hat first, maybe you won't see how I'm actually feeling. So it is so healing for so many people. Like when they put on weight, they completely feel different because of how they're now dressing. So it's now learning to dress your new body and how that feels. So I find that it's such a part of self-care, how you dress yourself.
So how do we balance that then? Because you say, people see my hat before they see how I'm feeling. How do we balance that between allowing it to be a part of our identity, but not allowing it to kind of overshadow or be the thing that's kind of like the armor, not in a good way, kind of overshadowing what's actually really going on, or being this kind of this screen that's protecting us from being able to access our feelings?
So I think everything comes in timing. So I think for a point, like I said, that was really beneficial for me, because maybe I couldn't step into spaces if I didn't have my body armor. So it's like, it's that good point of, you're going to put this on because for now you may be in healing zone. So as long as, I feel like it's really good to touch on this, because I feel like this is a big thing of Instagram as well. It's like the unfollow culture is amazing. So it's like, if that was, the clothing is the body armor, so you go into it, but that doesn't mean that you aren't internally healing, you aren't internally seeking therapy or help, or you're going to the doctors. But in order to step into different zones and not have to just be inside, if you're in a really depressed state, that is a good way to do it. Or if you don't like your body, rather than I can't go out for my friend's birthday because I hate my body, you know, when you learn to dress it, it helps you get to that space where you may not have got to. And that's how I kind of feel with Instagram. It's really great to unfollow someone that could be triggering you, but a lot of people unfollow without looking at, why is it triggering me? If someone's bought a new car and that triggers you, you know, look at, what am I not doing for my own self-care? What am I not allowing myself to move forward and grab and get? That is you know, that's hurting me. That's making me want to unfollow them because they're constantly getting new clothes. Well, what have you not done for yourself lately? It's fine to unfollow people, but find out why. If you're unfollowing someone because you just don't like their content, you know, everyone's not for everyone. We are in a Marmite world, that's fine. But if it's a bigger, deeper reason why you're unfollowing somebody, please do unfollow, but you also have to take care of, why is that reason?
That's so profound, because I think we can say that for generally, not just Instagram, right? Because it's like, I had this conversation with my husband the other day. He was going, "You're triggering me. What you're saying right now is triggering me." I said, "Okay, but let's look at why it's triggering you. Don't just look at, I'm triggering you. Let's have a think about why what I just said triggered you." And we need to do that, don't we? Because we need to take responsibility. And we spoke about this on the episode with Melissa on episode 23. She was saying, you know, if someone's triggering you, it's a reflection of what's going on in you. It's not what they're doing. People aren't doing to us. Things are going on within us that need to heal. And I also really love what you said about that, because healing takes time. So if the clothes are at that particular moment are what are getting you through that healing process to get you to the other side, then that's okay. It doesn't mean it's a vice or it's external gratification just to kind of cover up whatever else is going on. It's helping, it's a medium that's helping get you to that point. So that's really, I really love that you said that.
We don't realize that everything can be a deeper thing. It's even what we do with food, isn't it? Like, for a time, food might be your comfort. Then after a while, you know, when you're getting to a bit of a better space, you have to look at what I can't still use this as a comfort, because, you know, I need to look at what it's doing to my body. So there's always an action. Like, even when you said about people triggering you, like you said about your husband, it's like, that's great. Look at why it's triggering you. But again, we always, this is something that's always got me about that. You know, when you say, people say it all the time, it's a bit spiritual thing as well. It's like, if someone's triggering you, look at why. And that's a mirror of you. And I believe that to be a real thing. But there's also a thing of like, there is certain people that could, you know, trigger you on purpose. So it's a two-way thing. The triggering you need to look at yourself and your healing and accept that. But as a partnership, as a friendship, as a relationship, we also need to be careful that there's certain things that could always trigger people, no matter how much they're healing. It could re-trigger something they've already healed. So it's just such a touchy pathway.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're so right. I think in this instance, it very much was, I knew why it was triggering him, and I knew that I could see what he needed to open up. And if I told it to him, he'd get even more triggered. So I just had to say, okay, you know, I'm sorry I've triggered you, but why don't we look at why it's so triggering? But you're right, because there are certain things that for us as humans are going to be triggering, or certain people, you know, like my mum. I love my mum so much, but certain things she does or says trigger me. But then, you know, equally, if I look at those things, there are reasons why those trigger me, you know, based on childhood stuff. And so I think that, you know, we can always kind of delve into that and see. But you're right, you know, everything is nuanced. Nothing's black and white. And we can always, you know, nothing's ever, okay, it's always you or it's always them. So that,
exactly.
yeah, it's an interesting way.
Sometimes we can avoid looking at something because you feel like, well, you've triggered me and that's you, or you've triggered me, it's me. And you can either go, it could be, there's so many ways that, you know, that we could self-harm on ourselves, because, you know, you keep looking at yourselves for triggering, which is such a good thing, to always check in with yourself. Why is it doing it to me? And once you've aligned with that, that's fine. But also to not be like, oh, you know, it's true. There's so many different ways to look at it. So I think once you've always done that self-check, that's great.
Yeah. And then I guess what you're saying is finding balance, because yeah, like, you know, we can take everything too far, right? So the whole self-reflection thing can be, okay, maybe it's just too much. Maybe sometimes I just need to step away and not constantly look at myself and what's wrong with myself and what have I done wrong. So a bit of balance, maybe.
Perfect. Balance is definitely the right word.
But you know what you said as well about kind of giving yourself time. I like that. I think maybe in all aspects of self-reflection, self-healing, self-optimization, whatever we want to call it, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Where what you said about the clothes, why it resonated with me so much is because instead of expecting everything to be perfect and you start doing the work on yourself and therefore you expect such and such to happen, sometimes you have to do certain things to get yourself just through that time, because things take time. And a bit like the triggering stuff, maybe my husband just needs to feel triggered for a while until he can come to it on his own when the time is right. And I think timing is important.
I definitely agree. And we seem to want to rush things because this is our life now. Things happen in such a fast pace. Like even when it comes to my own healing or my own, like things will come up again and I'll be like, no, I've done that work. You know, it's like a little bit of anger, I've done that work, but we always forget that this is forever work. And that's the bit that's sometimes so painful. Like this journey of self-love, this journey of self-reflection and healing, it can be a consistent onion that we're peeling. And sometimes that can be the hard part.
So true, right? Because sometimes you're just like, you think you've got it all figured out and things feel really aligned, and then something else will come up to test you or to see if you're, you know, in your purpose and in your authenticity, and you'll be like, oh, for God's sakes, you know, I thought I was there, you know. And then it's just, it's constant learning. What I want to know is, were you brought up with spirituality?
Well, I was brought up religiously Christian. Other than that, but I wouldn't say that I lean into that for, you know, for years. I don't think I've learned into that, because there was two religions in my household. My dad's a Rastafarian, so he's a Rasta, and my mum was brought up Christian. Like her dad was Christian, he religiously went to church until he died. So there was these two differences. So I feel like because there was those two differences, I never had to feel to lean into one way. So I believe there was a higher purpose, there was a you know, I believed in a God, I always prayed to a God. But you know, as I grew up, I started to learn different modalities of that, and that if in fact it's really good to take from, as personally I have taken from lots of religions. This isn't that anyone else has to. I've taken on from a lot of religions. There's things that I see from people that are Muslim, people that are Buddhist, and I take on a lot of it and I make that my own thing rather than I stick to one religion.
Yeah, I so agree. I think it's nice, you know, saying that you were brought up with two religions, and that it's not that confused you. What that did was open you up to the idea that there is a God and there is some sort of, or whatever you want to call it, some sort of higher divine being. And you, I guess, would have taken things from each side. So you were saying your grandfather going to church. Sometimes, you know, the family going to church is like a real warming thing that you look forward to, because it's a part of the family culture and something that, I don't know, that kind of that remains with you as a good memory. And then on the other side of things, having different cultures and traditions, the same with my family. And I think we can take so much away from that. So when did it kind of merge more into, because I mean, all religion is spirituality, right? It all came from the same God for the same reason, the same messages being shared, just in different ways or interpreted in different ways. But quote unquote spirituality, when did that come to you, and when did you start taking that to the next level?
I would say maybe just before I had my daughter. So in my early 20s, I had my daughter when I was 21. So I would say when I was about 19, 20, I started to look into, you know, the more spirituality, the more the law of attraction, the more trading the way my thought is. And in that obviously became like you're searching, you're looking for more things and to how things can be done differently. So religion aside, when I started to really go inward and find myself and how I could show up to the world, that was around about that age, my early 20s.
And did that help you then in early motherhood as a young mum?
Most definitely, it really did help me, because as we, being a young mum was hard anyway, and I was very, very much connected to my mother. Like, we are still best friends. So moving out was super hard. I moved out when I was 21, and it was really hard. And being able to be, we weren't that far away, but being outside the house, not being on the same road is hard enough when you're that close. So it was a real good thing to lean on. And then I split up with my daughter's dad in the first year. So again, having that higher purpose, having that way of thinking was really helpful.
Yeah. So when did it happen that that you moved from styling into the wellness industry? And how did that happen? Or like,
yeah, so that was, as I said, so I think I had a mentor, and I think it was one of her words when she said to me, I think I was starting to get into a space of, so I think it was around 2015, 2014, 15, my daughter was a bit older, and I think I'd moved back home, because I'd moved back home for a bit to stay with my mum. And because I had it kind of, as I said, I broke up with my daughter's dad quite young, and I had, therefore I was a single mum on my own from a very young age. So I had all the plates managing. And I think when I moved back to my mum around 2015, I was allowed to place the plates down. And with that, I got complex PTSD, and I fell into a very deep depression. So obviously, being able to lean on those spirituality things, being able to lean on meditation rather than looking to medicine to help my depression, was so helpful. So the more I learned these things, I was like, well, if I love these things, then so many other people must. And I said, so I had a mentor, and I was like, I'm not sure where I am with styling at the moment. And she was like, well, what do you love about it? And I was like, I love helping people. And I'd always wanted to be a life coach from a very young age. From when I had my own life coach, when me and my daughter's dad broke up, I was like, I really love this. I love this helping people. So I thought about going into coaching, and I tried it, and it really wasn't for me. But that I was able to step into, well, I like styling because I actually like healing people. I like helping them. I like finding out more than the fashion side of it. I was always asking them, so what's really wrong? So where do you really need help? So with that, I thought, people obviously aren't knowing, on a greater aspect, how amazing meditation can be. Like, the people that come to me for help aren't knowing that meditation is literally medicine, being able to connect back to yourself. So when I learned that, I obviously wanted to take it out to the wider world. And then as I got into a deeper and deeper depression, I started going to retreats and finding things like that. And I started also thinking, well, this is amazing, but I feel like I need more. And if I need more people must. So then I just started learning more. I started, getting qualifications. And then that's how I really started to embody it and make it my work. So I couldn't, in that deep depression state, going through complex PTSD, some days I couldn't get out of bed, the house. So being able to style people just wasn't accessible for me anymore. And I'd lost the love for it, trying to, as I said, put on an armor to go and serve somebody when I really just need to serve myself.
yeah, that's so profound. It kind of acknowledging when we need to serve ourselves and we have to stop serving others in order to let that healing happen. Are you open to talking a bit about your depression? And
of course, yeah.
Love to hear more about that, because I think so many people suffer from depression, and hearing other people open up about it, and the journey of that and where it took you or where it came from really helps.
Most definitely. So looking back now, I can see that my depression was an awakening. It enabled me to connect to my angels on a much deeper level than I was ever aware of. But the depression came from a childhood trauma that was, ignited by the complex PTSD. So because that it started giving me flashbacks of what happened to me as a child. And moving into that allowed the depression to really take center stage. And the both of them were the healing processes I need to look at in order to move on. And I was just aware that as a child, I was connecting to angels in a way that I didn't know, but that was actually keeping me in a space of being safe and, feeling like I had a connection, that I wasn't alone in this. So it was throwing me back to all these things, remembering all these things that were throwing me deeper and deeper into this depression. And it was very deep and so suicidal. And putting them all together, as I said, allowed me to have this awakening, because I started to connect to spirits. I started to connect to my grandparents that had passed, getting channeling messages from them. So in one aspect, it felt so healing that I was able to access this other part of my spirituality. But on the other side of it, it was, really, really sad. So as I said, I went through this childhood trauma, and it was really amazing because it was my grand's anniversary of her death yesterday. And off the back of that made me remember that, as I said, I went through this childhood trauma, and without talking about it, because each word can also be triggering for the other. So it was because of that, I'd opened up as a child to say these things had happened to me. And, when my grandparents, it was on that side of my different grandparents' side. It was my dad's side. And off the back of that, I'd admitted that this had happened, and people didn't believe me. So while I was going through this deep journey, my gran had come through to me, and it was my mum's gran had always come through to me, and she'd always supported me. I'd be able to channel her through most of my depression. But it was, and I'd always wondered why my dad's mum didn't. But she came through at one point, and she apologized, and she'd said she was sorry, and she said she hadn't believed me. And being able to channel that message was so deeply healing while I was in that space. That the reason I was in this depressed state was off the back of all that and the PTSD that had come. So there was so many beautiful moments throughout the depression, but also very dark suicidal ones.
Was that enough at that point? Did you feel like it was too little too late, or were you able to forgive her?
Oh, it was the most, it was never, it wasn't too little too late. It was exactly what I needed at that time. And even now in this afterlife, I feel like it's bonded us in a way that would maybe not have happened. So it's been really beautiful. And as I said, it was her anniversary yesterday, and being able to be able to remember that, it was so healing, because it even meant that in the afterlife, I can look at her in a much different way. If that forgiveness hadn't come, it would have been a lot harder to, there's bitterness in there, there's hurt and pain in there if you haven't had that confirmation or forgiveness.
Absolutely. I still think it's pretty amazing, though, that you were able to find that within you, the forgiveness, and be open to all these things while you were in kind of the throes of depression, which sometimes for some of us, we can't then look at anything like that. Everything is just bleak. So it's pretty amazing that you were able to do it. But I'm guessing that was because of your connection to spirituality and understanding that however depressed you were on this kind of human level, there was a bigger picture. And I think when we have an acknowledgement that things aren't as bleak.
That's so true. And that's what I found quite hard about my depression, because I'd obviously had this forward-thinking spiritual mind, this positive attitude mind, and I always felt like the two minds were consistently at war with each other. So as I said, I'd think suicidal thoughts, and I'd go to doctors and be like, but my rational mind and my heart space and the spiritual space knows that that's something I don't want, but yet I am very close to feeling like this is it for me. So I'd go to doctors and say, I don't understand how I know what my higher self wants, but this big dark cloud is taking that away from me. So I found like the two of my minds, the two of my souls and hearts were consistently at war with each other.
Do you think maybe that was part of the journey, though, part of your learning journey, in order to be able to learn how to merge the two and how to have an understanding of what we are on a human level? Because I always come back to this. I think it was Jim Fortin who says we are cosmic beings having a human experience. So we absolutely are those cosmic beings, but we also absolutely are having a human experience. And having a human experience means that you go through, we suffer the human experience. We are prone to suffering, and we can't change that. We can just change kind of how we react to it. So having those two at war potentially was part of the journey to kind of merge the two.
Most definitely, I do agree. And I think if I'm able to see it, I think that having that other side of me and it being so ingrained in me was the reason why I'm still here today, I think
that's such a great lesson for people to, it doesn't, whatever state of depression you're in, don't judge yourself based on that. Just keeping the faith, regardless of how depressed you are, is going to have some sort of beneficial effect along the way.
I definitely agree. It's like it was the light always pulling me. So I found that really positive.
Wow, it's so amazing to hear. What I'd like to know is, what modalities did you use for your depression? Did you go to therapy? Was it simply the meditation? What healing modalities did you use? And did you end up taking the antidepressants?
And I never took antidepressants. I think I tried a few tablets, literally as in 5 to 10. And I was just like, I had this deep feeling that a friend even asked me maybe a week or two ago, because she'd ended up taking antidepressants. She said, why didn't you? And I said, you know, personally, I always wanted to personally know that I could get through it. And I could, in my head, this isn't to say for anybody else not to take these, but in my head, I was like, I want to be able to feel and get to these emotions. I didn't want to feel like this is not what antidepressants do. This is what my own thinking was. So please don't take it that this is gospel for what happens. But I didn't want to feel like I was covering up or making space for myself to not delve deeper into what was going on inside of me, to not look at the CP, to not look at the complex PTSD, I didn't want to avoid anything. I was in that space where I wasn't working, and I wanted to literally work on myself, find myself, heal myself. And I didn't want anything else to take away from that. So I wanted to find things and places and people that, you know, was able to guide me back. And it was Christmas, I think 2018. And my daughter was, she most Christmases she goes up north with her grandparents and her dad, and she was up north, and I was, you know, Christmas is very much for the children, so I was kind of in that space where there was no one home. I think everyone was away, and I was like, okay, this is not where I want to be, and I don't think that I could actually break another day. I'd gone to the doctors that year, like literally days before, and I'd said, you know, how do you know when it's not, when that thought of suicide is then moving into an actual action that can't be there's no turning back. And she was like, well, you know, I don't really know, because people don't often come to us when they're to say this. And I said, and that was again where I said to you, like, I was being guided by my higher purpose. And anyway, so it was that day I was on the sofa. It was might be Christmas Eve, and I was feeling like, you know, this is it. And an angel came to me at that point and was like, you know, that there's other options. And I think I was moved back to a space of finding tablets. They were herbal tablets. They were to help with my serotonin level. And once I was guided to them, I was able to move forward in a whole nother level. So it was a two-way thing. It was like I had something to support me that I felt wasn't the antidepressants, but was actually help raising my serotonin level. And I had the angel guidance there that was like guided me at that really dark point where I didn't think I could go on. So with those two things, they really helped. And then meditation, I had Reiki sessions. Did I have therapy at that point? I don't think I had therapy at that point, because I think that was the reason I kept going back to the doctors, because I was like, you know, I need therapy and I'm not getting it. And that was it. Yeah, because I think as a child I'd gone to therapy and didn't really understand how talking could help. So for years I'd put it off. But at that point I was like, you know, the waiting list was so long. So, and I wasn't working, so it wasn't like I could afford to do it myself. So yeah, that's what I did. I had Reiki sessions, I had meditation, I was going consistently to yoga 3 times a week and for 2 hours at a time. And that was really supporting me.
When I learnt that tap water contains things like chlorine, fluoride, and excess amounts of estrogen, I knew I needed to make this a priority for my family's health. So I spent hours researching water purification systems. In the end, I chose a mega home distiller, and here's why. Firstly, they're one of the only distillers that actually removes hormones like estrogen, as well as the chemical nasties. Believe it or not, a lot of the distillers out there don't actually remove much, they just improve taste. The Mega Home is also a really compact system that sits on your countertop. Taking the nasties out of the water was obviously the most important thing, but it had to be affordable too. I couldn't spend thousands on a complete home water filtration system, and that was the final deciding factor. The Mega Home Distiller is surprisingly affordable, and I managed to get enough water for a family of 5 from 1 to 2 distillations a day. I personally recommend this distiller, and luckily for us, the lovely guys at Mega Home have been kind enough to offer listeners of Reconditioned a 5% discount. Head to megahomedistillers.co.uk and enter the code CONDITION5 at checkout. That's CONDITION 5. Thank you to Mega Home. Well, I mean, I'm just kind of in awe at how you used these kind of spiritual modalities to guide you through the darkest time. Have you heard about Gabby Bernstein's story with depression?
I think it's funny you said that, because I hadn't touched on Gabby Bernstein for a while, and it was, I think I'd watched one of her April Soul Sundays or whatever it is, and it was maybe that was 2016. So as I said, it really started in 2016. I'd found Gabby Bernstein. My friend had sent me this YouTube. She's like, oh, you'll love this lady. I turned to her, and it was seeing Gabby, seeing how she makes spirituality so now at the time, that I was like, oh, I'm really drawn to this. So at that point, again, as I said to you, I didn't have much money, and I wanted to delve into more how spirituality could become my work. So I'd heard Gabby Bernstein's story. It also triggered because she'd been through, an abusive timing at that point. She was talking about it, and I was like, okay, great. So I got into a real Gabby Bernstein hole of loving everything she did, reading all her books. And then she was offering a course of how to help you step into spirituality into your work. And I think it was something like £2,500. At a time I was like, great, I'd love to do that. Knowing that I shouldn't be going out there saying I didn't have the money for this. I think I was on the course at the time, and one of those pop-ups had come. And so I'd gone to this pop-up and was like, when will you next be running this course? And the guy was like, and the pop-up was like, well, why what's wrong with you joining now? And I was like, well, it's not really in budget at the moment, not using the word, I didn't have the money. And he was like, well, we offer a scholarship, I think it'd be really good for it. And I was like, oh, okay, thinking, you probably say this to everybody. I then went on the net and was Googling how to find out about getting the scholarship, and they hadn't advertised it apart from on Twitter for years. So I was like, this is really weird. So anyway, I hate doing YouTube videos. I hated talking about myself, and that was a really big thing. You had to make a video, send it in order to see if you could qualify for the scholarship. But I was in such a space where I knew that I wanted to make this my work. So anyway, that's what I did. I put a video forward and I got a scholarship for it, and it was so helpful at my own journey. There was a meditation she did that super triggered where I was at, and super triggered even more stuff coming out. So I remember listening to this meditation, and it was a huge trigger for me, and my PTSD went into abnormal level of speed of bringing me everything that was happening. And again, I was quite angry at the time, like, oh my god, I did this meditation. I think I'd gone to a hypnotherapist at the time, and I'd rang her up and she was like, that triggered something that we've actually already healed. But that triggering something actually put me into an even deeper depression. But again, I accessed my angels at a ridiculous level that we hadn't actually come one-to-one with. So that's why I say there's always layers to the triggering, and it can be good, it can be bad, but it's always finding that one thing. Like I said to you, I was on what I would say, it was at the end for me, and that angel came and swooped in and saved me. And that may not have happened had I not did the triggering meditation that took me to that space 6 months later.
Wow. Yeah. See, what I loved about Gabby Bernstein's story, and the reason I brought it up, was I've heard her recently talking about postnatal depression, and she was in such a bad place that she had these suicidal thoughts, and that what you were saying before about kind of being in battle with yourself. And she had all this guilt surrounding, look what I do for a living, and people follow me, and the things I say that they should do to make them happy. And here I am depressed, wanting to kill myself after I've had a baby. And she was literally in the space of constantly judging herself because of that, which wasn't obviously helping the healing. And she was so bad that she had to take the antidepressants. And she said, I didn't have a choice because I would have died otherwise. And so what they did was they just got me through that stage so I could then do the healing, so I could come off of them. And I think that was really, to hear that from someone who does what she does. I think she's very brave for saying it. I think it's really important as well. I do think there needs to be a balance. I think in this country and in America, antidepressants are way overprescribed before any doctor actually sits down with someone and says, okay, what's causing this? Let's find the root cause and let's find ways to work through it. And like you say, you know, therapy just isn't just available for everyone who needs it. And some people can't afford to go and get a private therapist. So there's all those factors to be taken into consideration. But there are obviously cases where it is going to be the only thing that gets you through. And I think then understanding, okay, I'm not going to use it as a crutch. I'm going to let it get me through, let it help me through, and then I'll start the healing when it gets me into a space where I can do that, and then be able to leave that to the side, you know? So it's like you say with the fashion, you know, we use things to help us heal, but then we have to do the deeper work. We can't rely on these things to be the external force.
That is so true. I must go and find that story. That's really beautiful, because that is such a thing. Like when I finally did get a therapist, and I was I think, as I said, this was still 2018, maybe beginning 2000. Yeah, it was 2018. And I remember beginning of 2019, I remember saying, to actually not that long ago, I remember going to them and saying, how am I supposed to, I'm now in this wellness world. I now, you know, proclaim all these things help. And right now I'm in such a deep space. How am I supposed to, you know, that was a real feeling. I was like, yeah, how am I supposed to show up when I'm not
I
showing up
remember that with you.
myself?
I remember that with you. And I remember saying to you, you can be a work in progress and still help others. Your gifts are still your gifts, regardless of what you are experiencing on a human level.
It's so true. And it was so good when you gave that information. And the therapist also said, she was like, you know, if you went to a doctor and they were really ill, maybe they had diabetes or they had cancer or something, would you feel like you couldn't take their advice from all the knowledge they already know because they themselves were ill? And I was like, no, you're right, you wouldn't. You just take on their advice, because, you know, we're all human and these things all happen. It doesn't mean you don't have the things to help, and not everybody's at that space where you are.
And also the gifts that you have and what you can offer people is different to what someone else can. So the fact that you went through an experience as a child, number one, wasn't your fault. So that caused, you know, a chain reaction of depression and PTSD, which wasn't something that was within your control. But also that what that did cause was part of your healing and learning journey. I mean, I'm learning this myself now. It was kind of like, you know, I cured myself from the arthritis and I was in, you know, a wheelchair, and now I'm not, and hey, and now I'm a coach, and oh, but then I get hit with this trigeminal neuralgia thing, and then that feeling of, oh my gosh, well, are people going to think that I'm, you know, good enough to give them advice on their health and their life when I'm managing a condition myself? But I know that that condition was meant to take me to the next level of learning so that I can help people even more. Because if I really go into this condition and see what are the lessons here, what's it trying to teach me, what is the test, and what are the lessons, that's what makes me a teacher. How I manage it, not whether or not something comes on.
That's so true. I think it's just another way of us to, you know, as we do, as I said earlier, sometimes we get at ourselves for things that we really don't need to be so hard on ourselves about.
Yeah. And I remember you in that space, and it was amazing because you were still teaching so much and offering so much guidance and doing things with everyone else that was like, people were having these profound moments of awakening because of you. And then you were like in this space and finding it difficult to believe in yourself when all around you were helping all these people. So it was so important for you to see that.
It was such a beautiful space. I remember you sending me a card, and it was just such a good thing to realize that, like you said, you can help people even though you're not in your own space, as long as you're still helping yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's what it comes down to. If you are trying to help people, but then you're going home at the end of the day and not doing any healing on yourself, then that's not a space that you can be helping others, because it's not coming from a place of authenticity. So I think that's definitely a big point in terms of, you know, teaching or, you know, being a healer of some sort. I'm interested in knowing about your meditation practice and what is involved in that.
So I always say that the biggest meditation practice I have is connecting to my breath. So I always say that we have our breath and it can connect to at any point. So even if there's times when I obviously go through beautiful Kundalini meditations that I'm doing for 80 days, 100 days, and there's times when I don't have the headspace, the time for that. But as long as I can connect to my breath, I find that is the most beautiful guide back to myself. And even when people say, you know, I can't meditate, I say, but we have the breath. And you know what we seem to, as we do with everything, this could be, we do it with everything because we're human, we're people. We can make something to be harder than it needs to be. And all I say is if people remember that, you know, you can just close your eyes wherever you are and you can breathe and literally just take a breath in and out, that itself is meditation. Connecting to the breath, concentrating on the breath is meditation. So I am forever doing that.
Yeah, and that's such good advice, because like you say, we just overcomplicate everything, don't we? And simplicity is key. We're not trying to reach enlightenment. We're not trying to, you know, become these monks in a cave in the Himalayas. We just need to connect to the breath and kind of calm everything down so that we just calm the autonomic nervous system and just allow the brain to have some space, which we don't get in this daily life anymore.
This is it. And you know, when we go back to what we say to kids, or what you say when you're angry, when you can just count to 10, again, you're in a space of meditation because you're stopping how you're feeling. You're connecting back to how you're thinking. You're trying to calm yourself down. When people say, just, you know, stop and count to 10. Let's be honest, that is a form of meditation because you're stopping how you're thinking. You're going back into you're accessing how you think and feel, and you're calming yourself down. That is basically meditation as well.
And self-awareness, you're practicing self-awareness, and that is a form of meditation, just being like connecting to your consciousness. We all have, you know, we are all part of consciousness. Just being aware that you are consciousness is being conscious. I also say to people sometimes, you know, they're like, I just can't meditate. So instead of daunting them with, okay, you need to sit down for 20 minutes, you need to do this, you need to do that, I think, okay, do you have a shower every morning? Yeah. When you're in the shower, can you take a minute or 2 minutes of that shower, no longer, or if you can manage it, just the whole shower, you don't need to do anything else that takes time out of your day because you're having the shower already, to just breathe. And if you have a mantra, introduce the mantra. If not, don't worry about that, but just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. That is a meditation. And then once people see that, okay, that's made them feel better, and that was 1 minute or 2 minutes out of their day, they instinctively just then want to take it to the next level.
This is it. And it's so perfect to remind you. I always do the same, remind people about the shower, about the bath, or just those 5 minutes in bed before you've even got out. Like, you opened your eyes before you reach for your phone or do anything else, or you think about what you got to do for the day. Just take 5 breaths in and 5 breaths out for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, before you start your day, there could not be a more important time to do that, I think, because then you are really setting yourself up for the day. For me, it's like before, you know, sometimes my kids wake me up in the middle of the night or ridiculous times of the morning, and you know, I used to get really angry about it, and you know, I'm feeling really aligned at the moment, and so whatever time it is, I just think, okay, you know, first of all, I'm not going to tell myself this constant story of I'm tired and blame it on my kids, you know, because how is that going to help? We can choose our thoughts. So, you know, and I am not my thoughts. I can choose what they are. If I have the choice to choose, why would I choose a miserable thought? So I just put a good thought in my head, right? You know, an affirmation. I usually use the same affirmation to start my day every day, just to like help that. And I think if you just do that, you know, a nice affirmation, so you're setting yourself up for the day. And then, like you say, some breathing, even if it's like a minute of breathing in and breathing out intentionally. It's just such a great way to start your day with intention.
It's so beautiful. It's just, and as we said, these are just such simple reminders that when we give ourselves the excuse, I don't have time to meditate, of course, those days when I have half an hour to meditate, I am on a different level of Zen for the day, a different level of productivity, a different level of self-love and self-care of how I talk to myself. They definitely work. That half an hour to an hour is amazing. But if I don't even have the 5 minutes check-in or the 1 minute check-in, it really throws my whole day off. It's such an amazing thing for us to do these little reminders of the shower, the bath, the 5 minutes before bed, the 5 minutes or the minute before you get out of bed, because it's so great when I have the half an hour and that hour meditation. Those mornings when I'm able to get up at 6 and have half an hour to myself, just to meditate, to connect to my self-love, my gratitude, to access the angels, my day days are a ridiculously different level of productivity, of alignment, of self-care, the way I talk to myself. It's on a completely different level. It's so nurturing. But if I don't even connect to that 1 minute or the 5 minutes, my whole day is like thrown off, because you just realize that you're on autopilot of, you know, maybe it could be anxiety, it could be stress, it could be thinking of the next thing. You're not living in the moment. But the minute you set that intention to live in the moment and just connect to your breath first thing in the morning, or whenever you remember to do it in your day, it can literally change your day.
It really does. My friend called me yesterday and she was like, I was having a really stressful day and I had so much to do. And then I thought of you and I thought about meditation and I thought, okay, I've got all this stuff to do, but I'm going to meditate. And then because she meditated, she was able to do all the things that were on her list, because your productivity is so much better when you're coming from that space, because stress and the stress hormones, in a physical, scientific sense, they do not help with productivity.
Mm-hmm.
They make it harder. What I want to step into now is business, because you are a female entrepreneur in the wellness industry and spirituality, and I am really, really passionate about women stepping into their purpose and using that purposeful energy to create successful businesses. And I think we touched on it a bit before, but one thing I think many women feel is, but maybe they don't actually acknowledge at a core level, is that we don't deserve to earn a lot of money from what we love, or especially if you're working in the spiritual or holistic world, it's as if you shouldn't earn from helping people. But I'm such a big believer in money being an exchange of energy, and that we can choose how to take it in and how to put it back out. And I'd love to know how you, as a woman in business in the field of spirituality and wellness, how you feel about that.
I completely agree with that. And I think, money is the most beautiful exchange of energy. And when we think of it, money is there for everybody, and it's all these beautiful, amazing things, which I am still stepping in and growing into, because as we said, being someone in the spiritual world and knowing it's so healing to people, it has always been that pull for me of like, oh, well, if someone can't afford it, I really want to give it to them, because it's, I know how much it can help somebody, and therefore having it at a price that's ridiculously accessible, but that doesn't always serve me as a person. So this is something I'm still stepping into and growing into. When I set up the retreat, I set it up it wasn't a profitable thing. It was just me having a space to, I was still in depression, so it was having a space for me to step into and grow from, me to step into and help use these healing modalities to help others. And then as I got better and wanted to make it in more of a business, I'm now stepping into believing that it's also a worth. Money, you're deserving, you're worthy. And as a woman, and as somebody, as we said, in the spiritual healing modality world, it's also a bit of like, yes, I do deserve this. There's still affirmations I'm working on stepping into, but I truly do believe that this is a world like every other world, that you need to charge your worth. And when you're doing these energetic things, it can take so much from you, and you give so much. So yeah, I do believe that you really should charge your worth. But it's something I'm stepping into. I went onto a retreat recently with Shah Wasmond, and it was a business retreat. And again, I hadn't stepped into that world of being able to talk money as much as I have on that retreat. And the retreat was truly amazing. It's called the One Retreat, and I literally just went on it maybe a month ago. Even that was stepping into a completely different world of realizing, I went there feeling like women in business have these huge egos and all these things. I had all these thoughts and feelings about it, and once I got there, it was such a healing thing to be able to speak money, to speak worth, to speak how much I believe I'm worth, to be saying I want to start charging this. And I just think, as I said, of everything, there's healing, there's growth, there's a time for everything. And I believe that we all step into it at a different time, and I'm now stepping into it.
I just love that. I love that you're stepping into it and seeing your worth, because let's take the retreat as an example. I paid a substantial amount of money for that retreat, but what I got out of it from you deserved that money. So why would I not pay that to you?
Yeah, that is. And as I said, as I was going through that healing space, it was like, it's such a big deal to be able to accept that. And I really feel like the new affirmations I'm saying and telling myself, I'm very much accepting that. I'm very much knowing that that's a thing. But, does it not scare me? Of course, it still scares me, but I'm stepping into that. And I think that's the beauty of owning your worth and being able to say that this what your work does deserve that.
Absolutely. Do you know who's a great lesson for this? Our mutual friend Stevie B, who has been on this podcast, and she is helping women with body confidence, and she is a stylist and she is smashing it. And I want to touch on why she's smashing it, because it's quite profound in terms of what we've just been speaking about in terms of the exchange of energy when it comes to money. What she's doing at the moment is she is helping so many people get to a place of body confidence, and people that I know from, Stevie and I grew up kind of around the same area. We know a lot of the same people, and she's having styling sessions now with people I know who never would have considered a stylist, because it used to be that, a stylist is for people with loads of money and you must be really pretentious. And because of how she stepped into her worth and her power and her passion to help people love themselves, whatever their size, she is getting all these clients, and everyone is happy to spend this money, when a few years ago they would have thought of spending money on a stylist to be totally a luxury, superfluous, just not worth it. And so I think that's a really good example of that, of how we can, when we step into our power and our purpose and we're really, really following our passion, we understand how the money comes and how it flows and why we deserve it, and we don't question that anymore.
You're so right, and it's so nice to remind us about Stevie, because she is amazing and she's grown and glowed so much. And when you're speaking about that, I thought of her journey, and I thought I've known her since she had the children, and she'd she'd stopped styling so much, and then she got back into the world, and watching her growth of it. But she's what you touched on, which was really good, and which reminded me of what somebody once told me. It was to remember, I used to think of when I was a stylist, and even when I started doing my meditations, people paying me for them, I used to think they were paying for the hour. So sometimes I'd think, well, I can't really charge that because they're only paying for the hour. But what's good to remember is they're not just paying for the hour. They're paying for all the thousands of pounds I spent on training. They're paying for all the thousands of pounds I lost for my healing. They're paying for all the things that I know that nobody else knows, or how I'm going to tell it to them like nobody else has. Because you can hear things from 10 different people, but it's that one person that says it a certain way that sticks into your mind. Maybe that they've come to me to say it that way. So rather than me always feeling like, if I'm charging you £250, that's a lot for an hour. It's like, it's not just the hour, is it? It's the 10-15 years I put into that hour.
Absolutely. And just also what they're going to take away from it for a lifetime. It's not an hour. If you offer something for in that hour that they're going to take away. And I know this, with clients that I've had who I've said something, and to me, although it's part of, what I teach, and obviously it's profound, for me, I didn't think that specific thing that I said was the be all and end all. They'll come back to me maybe a year later and say, it was that thing that you said that changed everything. It was that thing that made me do this or do that. And that's so powerful. Like, if you're making an investment and in a year's time, someone is still in such a great space because of that investment that they made a year ago, they're not paying for an hour, they're paying for a year of their life and more, because it's going to take them further in their career and in their life and in their happiness. You can't put a price on that. So, in terms of women in business, we absolutely deserve to earn what we believe we deserve, we should earn. And I think, taking guidance on that from spirit for me is important as well. Just sitting there and kind of connecting, saying, okay, how much should I charge for this service? Because when you feel like you're being guided divinely by that, I also think it's much more authentic.
I totally agree. And I think that's such a beautiful space to come from.
What I want to know as well, because you've said that obviously you've been going through a lot of your own healing while you've been building your business. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned as you grow your business?
I think that is it in general. It's that what I've learned, which is really good, and I think I touched on this the other day, it was that I didn't have to go full speed with making it really profitable straight away. Like I said to you, I'm now really stepping into that zone, and I think lockdown really helped that as well. So it's realizing that it is all a journey. So you could start business and you could be straight in with a certain price zone, you could be straight in with working 24/7, but I found like I would do a retreat and then I'd go back into healing. I would set out to do a certain meditate, maybe I'd just go to the studio and do meditations, then I'd go back into healing for the week. I might go to meditation 2-3 times a week, and then the rest of the time I wouldn't be trying to push too much because I'd still be in that healing zone. And I felt like taking my time with that and not seeing it as, right, this is it, I have to go full throttle into it, was truly what helped me get to where I am now. And I think, just accessing that, like, so much has happened since lockdown at a really fast speed for me. Like, since lockdown, I have, developed so much of my sound healing. I have been in so many more PR publications that I would have thought I had to have a PR agent for. So much has happened because of all that time and self-healing. And talking about lockdown, I obviously work in a studio, which was one of my, the best highlights of my day, was working in a studio or going to studio for that week. And having no studio to go to, not being able to leave the house and doing all those things in lockdown, a lot of people I would see were rushing to start up, online spaces. Instagram was full of people doing IGTVs and meditations and exercises. And at one point, when my cousin said to me, this could be the point where you start your subscription. This is the point where I said, do you know what? This is the point where I take time for myself. If at the other side of, and at this space, I felt like I was, we've been to Marrakesh, so I felt like I was in the supermarket. I'd open up Instagram, I'd open up the TV, and I felt like everyone was coming to me like, buy. It felt like consistent noise. So to take myself back to that space of, who knows where the money's going to be at the other side of this, because I'm not getting paid from the studios, I'm not getting paid from retreats, I can't do what makes me have money and what makes me feel happy. I went into my own healing for maybe 2 months, and I come out the other side, I went into the zone of like just sound bathing myself in sound, and what has happened from that has been beautiful. So it was knowing that, go at your own pace, check in with yourself, do not be, it sounds like not being that sheep, not being that follower, but really connecting back to yourself. It's so helpful in business, most definitely.
That's such good advice, not following the crowd and, jumping on the bandwagons. And I know one of my coaches, had said to me a few years ago, it's because you're like striving so much, and it's just almost creating a resistance, this kind of like cosmic resistance to what you actually want, instead of really listening to where you're meant to be and following it. So for you, listening to the fact that at that time you needed to be in your own healing, what comes from that is sensational, because you are then putting out into the universe that you are healing yourself, and then you are ready to receive when the time's right without pushing. And that push creates these blocks of resistance. It's so beautiful.
It's so true. And as I said, lockdown for me was like, gosh, who knows if we're ever going to get this space again to not have the FOMO of missing out on not getting work, or not being in that space, or not going out and networking, meeting people. It was just like, when will you ever get this time to just breathe and be and love the family and enjoy we were also in that space of like where you could so connect to fear, like who knows what's going to happen with your family members. So it was like, if this is a space where I can connect, have conversations, have Zooms, and have like one-to-ones that you don't have because you're so busy with the family basically, if this isn't a point where you can connect back to what really matters, then when is?
So true. So true. And it was so overwhelming, all that Instagram stuff. Like, I was so overwhelmed by it all. Like, we thought, okay, everything's going to shut down, and actually we're just going to kind of, my husband, because he's not really on social media, was like, it felt good to not have this FOMO of everyone's going here on a Saturday night, or everyone I know is going here for a holiday, or people have gone there for a holiday. There was no FOMO in that respect. But because I'm on social media, I felt that FOMO was like overwhelming. Like, here's another group that you need to join to help you with this, and here's and like, even though it was most of it was coming from like well-meaning spaces of, you know, here's something, a meditation you can do or an exercise you can do, it was just too much, wasn't it?
It was too, because I think what I found and what I found from speaking to a lot of practitioners that jumped on that bandwagon straight away is they were also reacting from fear, and in order to do that, they reacted in that way. So again, it's when I say, you know, I did what I did by stepping back, but they did what they needed to do to heal in that moment, and that was to react. Their way was to react, to jump up, to support somebody else in order to feel like that was their only space. But then, yeah, within time, they too was like, well, no, what am I doing? Like, I'm not even in alignment with myself here. But it's just how everyone reacts differently, isn't it?
It's such a good reminder, though, isn't it, to when things happen that are out of our control and these big kind of life-changing events, maybe just to take a step back before you follow the crowd, or before you make these big decisions of, right, everyone else is doing this, I've got to do this, quick, let's jump on the bandwagon. You know, just to take a breath and take a step back and just connect to yourself and take some kind of spiritual guidance to see, right, what am I meant to be doing, me personally, not because the rest of the world's doing it, what's my purpose right now? That was a good reminder for that.
Such a good reminder. But then it also had me, it was so funny because that was my reminder that I took from it. But the also lesson I learned was, you know, about just taking my lesson from it and not judging what others are doing, because at the same time, a bit like I liken it a bit to when you're grieving. When some people are grieving, they take time to heal, to nurture, to actually step in, remember that person, and to deal with how they're feeling. And some people jump straight into getting back to life, to not looking at it, because that is their healing modality at that point. They don't need to look at it, but it's then remembering that at some point you will have to, which is what I saw those practitioners do. They jumped right in because they were like, how do I make money? This is my space to make money. Then they were like, okay, no, wait, this is my space for me. So again, it's always that balance of like checking back in with yourself.
Yeah. But you know, there was that fear, of course, you know, if you've got family to support and you know you've had to close your studio down or whatever, it's like, okay, how am I going to support my family now? And sometimes you do have to do that. But I think equally taking a moment to just connect and ask for the guidance of how should I manage this right now when there's kind of life-changing things going on. I think that's always such a good way to make that decision.
I agree. It's always the way I lean to.
Yeah. I want to touch on your retreats quickly, because obviously, well, it's been exactly nearly a year since we went to Morocco, and you know, the inner work touches so deep. And I'd love for you to just talk us through exactly what happens at one of the retreats.
So the retreats in Morocco are like nothing I've ever been on. So even that was divinely guided. Even now, kind of touching on it, I've been going through headaches this week because we're supposed to be going again this year now, and obviously, you know, we're in that space where you can't trust what's going to happen. So I'm having to make that decision, you know, lean into the people and be like, maybe we're putting it back, and that's been a real learning curve in itself, in order to give in to the fact that I can't do anything about that. So what happens is, in Morocco, is we go on an immersion retreat. So we go on a complete journey of self while going on a complete journey of Marrakesh as itself. So we start in a villa where we deep dive into self-love, deeping into what's actually going on inside us. What can we access more of, or what do we need to let go of? So we spend 3 days doing that. And then we also spend 3 days bonding, but it's also a time of resistance. You can be resisting that. So that gives you that space in order to do that. And then we move to the desert, and that gives you a space of reflection. If you've had any resistance that you've been holding on to, once you get to the desert, you often let go of it, and you can just start to really seek that space of solace, of self-love, of nurturing, because you're in the silence. You haven't got your phone, you're not having access to your phone into the internet when you're away from reception, and you just have that space to really connect to each other. If you've been in a private room at the villa, I often make it that we share rooms, or you have times of when you're sharing spaces in the desert, because you get to have time where you know you can be silent, and time when you can share your thoughts and feelings. So it's really good to be having that moment in the desert where it's like your mind is able to just be still. And I forgot to touch on, we have the most amazing photo shoot at the villa, where it's a self-love photo shoot, where again you start to see yourself in either a beautiful space where you start to, you can question why you feel in this way about having your photos taken, and you can feel so raw and so open yet so beautiful. So the photo shoot session as well is such a journey of like, how do you judge yourself? How do you feel? And then really accepting yourself and blossoming into enjoying the moment of being able to just be at one with yourself. So that's what happens. And then we move into the city, which is such a beautiful space, because, city life is busy, especially in Marrakesh, and our own life can be busy, whether it's with work, with the children, with your everyday life, with your family. It's just a busy zone. So going back into Marrakesh and into the city itself just before you go home enables you to access all that you've learned, all the healings that you've done, and everything you need to let go of and have let go of, and know that this is a journey. So when we get into the city, anything that we've learned, we each can take on board. So it's a space where each of us can lead meditations that have been on the retreat. It's a space where we can all access maybe angel readings, and knowing how when we go back home we'll be able to do that, where we can lead affirmations. So everybody on that retreat gets to lead each aspect we've learned during the retreat, so that we know that when we go home we're able to do this ourselves. So it's such a really beautiful immersion retreat.
It really is. And you haven't even touched on all the practitioners, or the everyone that's there. We have amazing yoga and the meditations, and Gemma with her amazing food and personal training sessions, and it really is immersive. And it was such a healing experience for me for so many reasons. What was interesting about it though was how everyone dealt with each part of it so differently. So some people needed so much alone time to reflect on the things that were coming up, and we did a lot of journaling, didn't we? There was so much journaling going on, and yeah, like you say, like some of us there were things that came up because of the photo shoots, and we'd have to go and reflect on that. And some of us wanted, more time in the group bonding, because that was, talking things through sometimes is really helpful. And it just kind of, you got all of that, and you could take it, you could do with it whatever you wanted. I missed out on the bit when you went back to Marrakesh, because I had to get home to the kids. And that was my kind of compromise, wasn't it? Because it was like, right, Vida was 1 and Braxton was 4. And it was like, right, I've spent this whole year really immersed in breastfeeding and, being just mum all the time. And I need this for myself. But there had to be a balance. I couldn't be away for a whole week. But it was the most healing experience. It was so beautiful. Yeah, I'd love it. So are you only doing the Morocco ones just once a year?
No, it's twice a year, when there's no COVID, May and November.
May and November, okay, because I'm going to link up all the details for that in the show notes, so people can look that up, because as a retreat, I highly recommend it. I just, we've spoken so much because there's so much to chat about, but I do want to touch on one of your biggest passions as well, and something you're striving for, which is to make wellness and spirituality more diverse and accessible. I think by creating the retreats in the way you have, it does make it seem less overwhelming as a concept as well, and something that anyone, no matter where they come from, what their background is, can have access to. I want to know why you think the wellness industry is so lacking in so much diversity, because it really is lacking still.
It really is lacking. And I found that came on a race point. It also came on, it came on the thing of like bodies, like you feel like, if I spoke to women that were plus size, and they too didn't feel like they were comfortable in those spaces, as well as people that are from all different religions that also didn't feel comfortable in those spaces. I just think, when things started, everything changes, but sometimes things don't change with the times. And I feel like the wellness industry is one of those things that haven't had the doors open. So that was a really thing. As I said, when I was in my healing, I just went into these spaces and I'd be the only Black woman. And I'd be like, why is that? And then, I'd have Black women come to my retreats and be like, I never knew this was a thing. I never knew that this is how it could be. And I just didn't even know that this could help me in this way, because the doors just aren't open. And do I know why? I still haven't figured out why those things are. I don't know if it goes back to a thing, a bit like as women, we've been trying to push those doors open that have been closed to anyone that wasn't a man. And I just feel like sometimes those spaces are like that, people of different races and different body shapes.
Because like kind of ancestrally we hold that, don't we? We hold what we believe to be a truth or what's been passed down to be a truth. So, and it's nice that you touched on, you know, not just race or religion, it's about body types as well, because I think people really can feel like that. If you go to a yoga studio or even a retreat, you know, is everyone there going to be skinny and wearing all these yoga clothes and I'm going to look like this? Or, you know, so kind of the diversity has to come in every, you know, it's not just about one thing. It's about making it accessible to everyone, regardless of what they look like or where they're from or what their background is or what, you know, religion they follow. Yeah, that's and you do that. You are very big on that, and I love that about you. And I think you're trailblazing for that, which is amazing. I think it's
Thank
a
you.
huge thing, you know, to be proud of.
It's hard on
Without
some levels because I have a friend who's also disabled and she's in a wheelchair. And when she came to the retreat, it was like, you know, we don't take, even myself hadn't taken into the aspect of like what they need, you know, the
right,
ramps. And, you know,
yeah,
when I think about how can I allow these people to come on retreats, it's like, well, what would we do when we go to the desert and how would that work? And is there a ramp there? And, you know, what will we work when we're going down the hills? And it's like, it's really opening it up for people, as I said, to be inclusive on all levels. And that isn't easy, but it's something that needs to be done.
yeah, it's absolutely not easy. You know, I've, as you know, been in a wheelchair and I know what that's like. So, and it's very, very difficult emotionally, psychologically to know that people can just do these simple things because they can just get there. And if you're in a wheelchair, you can't. All these things have to be taken into consideration. Like you say, are there ramps? Is it, you know, even, you know, all the things, I think about all the things we did on the retreat, you know, just going into the market, you know, it's not exactly wheelchair friendly. But it's good that, you know, people, practitioners or, you know, leaders in the wellness industry are starting to open their eyes to diversity and inclusivity for everyone, because it's going to make the industry seem like and feel like a very different place if there is genuine diversity.
It's such a big deal, something we so need to step into.
I mean, I've loved every part of this chat. I could chat to you forever and ever, but we end each show with a series of questions and a segment called All About You, which just helps the listeners get to know you a little bit better. So, all about you, Aisha Carrington. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
It's funny you say that, because even when I knew this question was coming, again, this is when you have to trust your intuition. So my friend Hannah said to me, like, especially for the journey I've been going through and as I've been stepping more and more into my purpose, and she said, you know, you just need to be who you are because the world needs you. And I think that is when you think of everything else and every obstacle you come up to, when you think if you're stepping forward in alignment and being exactly who you are, I believe everything will work out.
I agree. I think that's such a great piece of advice. What do you wish someone would have told you before you started your business?
I wish they had told me that. I wish they had told me, yes, to lean into my worth more. I wish I'd listened and believed that. I think more people probably told me that, but I wish I believed it. I think that's the thing. I wish I believed it. I wish I was able to lean into those affirmations even more. But as I said, everything in divine timing. So that also is a thing, I believe, that you learn what you need to when you need to.
Yeah, very true. One misconception about spirituality.
That we all have a spirit, and spirituality is just connecting back to yourself. If you forget religion, if you forget all the things that you need to do to be a spiritual person, just know that we are spirit, and connecting back to yourself means you are a spiritual person.
I love that. The question you ask yourself most.
I think, you know, I'm going to go for the first thing that comes to my mind, and it's, am I worthy? And I think it's always remembering that affirmation. As I said, coming from somebody who had low self-esteem and who went through all the things, I think that being worthy is a thing that I always have to nurture and lean into. So that's personal to me.
Just for a little bit of fun to end, what would your last supper be?
I'm obsessed with pasta, so it would be macaroni cheese.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say macaroni cheese. I know how obsessed you are with macaroni cheese. Wait, but we need a starter and a dessert.
Dessert would have to be something sweet with ice cream, something like sticky toffee. And a starter would be like prawns or calamari, something fish.
Oh,
that was really good.
Okay, so if you ever come to my house, I know what to make you now.
Yes.
Oh, I've loved this so much. Thank you for all your wisdom and just, such a lovely chat, and for everything, all the knowledge that everyone's going to be able to pick. I think there are so many takeaways from this episode that people are going to be able to come back to time and time again. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been so healing, reflecting, and there's points where I've got quite emotional. So I'm thanking you for bringing this up, because as I said, it's consistently healing, and just having these conversations. Some of the things I've spoke about, or the way I've been able to adapt the way I think on it, I actually haven't spoken about before. So I'm just truly grateful for you to bring this conversation forward.
Oh, thank you so much. So the next retreat, you're not sure if it's happening, but where can people find you so they can keep up to date with all of this?
So you can find me on aishacarrington.com or the getlitretreat.com. The getlitretreat.com is also a shop that enables you to have retreats at home yourself by purchasing the products. And aishacarrington.com, I also now do one-to-one retreats. So even if we aren't doing a big retreat, you can book me and I can take you on your own personal retreat at a luxury hotel or a luxury space that we enable to give you 2 days of full-on one-to-one sound baths and healings and self-love deep diving.
Oh, and people have to follow you on Instagram for your sound bath, because these crystal sound bowls are amazing.
They actually are the most amazing thing I've ever connected with, I will be honest. And you can get me at Aisha Carrington _ on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The Reconditioned podcast is proud to support the El Shaddai Charitable Trust, an organisation in Goa who provide homes for orphan children and support for families living in extreme poverty by giving them a second chance at life. You can donate or support at childrescue.net.